Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. Are you ready to start today's story? Let's get started. Have you ever tossed and turned in the dead of night, doubting the sincerity of the one lying next to you? Have you ever wondered how you would strike back when your trust is shattered into pieces? Come with me and delve into the labyrinth of emotions to witness how love turns into betrayal and trust into ashes, and how people find the strength to rise from the ruins and reinvent themselves. Forecasting late spring weather in Pennsylvania can be tricky. This April brought exceptional amounts of rain and warmth. I usually wait until early to midday to cut the lawn for the first time. But not this year. Even though I had to start yard work early. I'm glad it's not snowing last year about this time. We had a snowstorm that left 15 centimeters of snow, so I'd rather mow early than deal with snow any day. Also, since that tax season is done, it's good to enjoy the sunshine outside my house. There is a distinct feature: a steep drop in the backyard that leads to a tiny creek in the woods. During construction, they added fill to bring the front of the home level with the street, resulting in a severe slope halfway up the side. As a result, the basement, which is totally enclosed in the front, opens to the back. This design allowed me to build a double door for services, ideal for keeping my lawnmower and other outdoor items without overcrowding the garage. It's one of my favorite features of the house. After finishing the yard work and putting everything away, I quickly rushed upstairs to take a shower. Allergies to grass make me want to clean up. As I climbed the stairs, I heard my wife's voice coming from the front of the house where I had been mowing. When I saw her friend's car, I expected to hear conversations, but their talk caused me to halt and place my hand on the door handle. Let me introduce myself. I'm Robert Crane, but I go by James in school. They called me Alex after Robert Crane, the actor from Alex's Heroes. Well, I was fine with the nickname. The show aired before my time, so it's not really a current reference. With an accounting degree from the University of Pennsylvania, I rapidly earned my CPA certification and now lead audit teams at a well-known company in Philadelphia. It's not the most fascinating job, but it pays well and gives me exposure to a variety of businesses. My expertise in forensic analytics, including the detection of financial traces to expose fraud and money laundering, has earned me recognition. I've even cooperated with the FBI on 2 occasions. Emily, my wife, was studying political science and business with intentions to go to law school when we met in our freshman year. I was sitting there waiting for class to begin when she strolled in. Emily was tall and thin, resembling a ballerina but with a larger chest. Her long strawberry blonde hair hung over her naked shoulders, a genuinely eye-catching scene. She donned a lovely sundress and sandals that highlighted her smooth and silky legs. Her purity and charm drew me in right away. Unfortunately, Emily did not sit next to me, nor did she participate in my group project. It took me 4 weeks to muster the guts to approach her and begin a conversation with a foolish joke that made her laugh aloud. We talked some more, and I finally invited her to drink coffee after class. "I've been waiting for you to ask that for 4 weeks," she responded with a smile. During our final 2 years of college, we were always together. Our parents were initially skeptical of us, but they eventually embraced our relationship after witnessing our deep dedication. I couldn't fathom things improving, yet they did. After graduation, I obtained a position at a well-known accounting firm in Philadelphia with a good pay for a 22-year-old fresh out of college. Emily was accepted to the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and we continued to live in our undergraduate apartment. I also began my MBA, which was financed by my employer, and commuted to work via SEPTA, which eliminated the need for a car and saved us money. 3 years later, Emily graduated from law school, and I proposed at a birthday dinner at Morton Steakhouse in Rittenhouse Square. We got married 6 months later, and Emily started working as a deputy district attorney in Bucks County, north of Philadelphia. We purchased a property in Doylestown, the county seat with a courthouse and convenient train connections. which made our commutes longer but preferable to dealing with traffic on the Schuylkill Expressway or I-95. Emily, with the help of her mother, located a decent starter home with 3 bedrooms, one for an office with 2 desks, a guest room and our main bedroom. The proximity to her parents' house made the site appealing, as Emily saw it as a potential nanny solution if we began a family. As an only child who had always desired siblings, I was thrilled with this new era. We had discussed having children since our freshman year and agreed to wait until Emily was established in her work. But the moment had come, and 2 nights ago, we decided to cease Emily's birth control and begin trying for a baby. I was overjoyed. Then I heard something that prompted me to put my hand on the doorknob. Alex and I agreed it was time for me to become pregnant. Emily gladly informed her friend Rebecca Watkins. Their loud, joyful yells reminded me of the heartbreaking image of whales mistakenly beaching themselves on the Jersey shore in their haste. Standing on the steps, I grinned at their delight, which matched mine as I looked forward to being a father. As I reached for the pen again, a statement interrupted my joy. Rebecca exclaimed, "This is wonderful, Emily, so what about Michael? The current scenario downstairs." "Hush," Emily soon responded. "Alex is outdoors mowing the yard." After a little delay, I imagined her gazing around, expecting me to be close. Then she continued, "I've already informed Michael that I'm ending the affair. He understands. With Grossman's retirement as senator, Michael sees an opportunity for himself. Being discovered in an affair with a married employee would not look good. It's simply that simple." Michael Evans, Emily's boss at the district attorney's office, was a 40-year-old widower with a daughter named Sophia. His wife and died of breast cancer, leaving him a single father. Michael was actively interested in politics, and Emily frequently told anecdotes about his political strategies for advancement. "So you simply quit like that?" Rebecca's dubious tone irritated me. She was a former Penn State classmate. Despite Emily and Rebecca's tight friendship, I knew someone else first. I assumed Rebecca was still my friend. It seems I was mistaken. "Stop it," Emily chuckled, brushing aside Rebecca's mocking. "Michael was intense but too much for me. I adore Alex, and I want to remain faithful and loyal while we start our family. How many more stereotypes are we going to laugh about?" I had a thought. All I need for complete happiness is to arrive home, discover an unknown car in the driveway, and find them both in my bed. I wanted to rush into the room, yell, and smash everything, but I was stuck. I was shocked, my heart beating in my ears. "Quitting so abruptly?" Rebecca inquired, prompting another laugh from Emily. "Not precisely," she admitted. "I have a conference with Michael in Pittsburgh next week. That will be our final goodbye. I'll miss the intimacy, but my priorities are Alex and the baby." I couldn't take it anymore, but I had no idea what to do. I care a lot about Emily, yet this was ripping me apart. My business instincts kicked in. I needed to take a step back and think strategically. I walked up the steps. I evaluated my alternatives. I opened the door and entered the kitchen. Emily and Rebecca were having tea. Was Emily's expression one of guilt? I wondered. "Honey, are you okay?" she inquired, her voice filled with anxiety. It was then that I noticed tears on my face. "Allergies," I replied quietly. "Spring is shaping up to be a difficult season. Let's go up and clean up." I simply left those garments near the bathroom. "I'll handle them straight away so they don't take up too much space in your closet. Remember when I brought you a new pack of Claritin and Zyrtec last week? It's within the medicine cabinet." I managed to say this as I made my way to the stairs. I needed some space to contemplate. The following morning, Monday, I departed for an early meeting before Emily awoke. Using it as an excuse to avoid her last night, I said that I went to bed early due to allergies. I'm hiding my true feelings sitting in the car. I considered what I had learned. On one hand, my wife had cheated, but the physical relationship appeared to be ended. Some might suggest I should be fine with this. I'm glad she intends to be a committed wife and mother now. However, I'm wondering if she'll cheat again. Could there be more clandestine meetings leading to a divorce in which Emily gets the kids and I bear the financial burden? As an accountant and business analyst, I'm used to calculating risks and advantages, and I approach this scenario in the same way. My faith in Emily is shattered. To dismiss her actions as purely physical misses the point. She had no respect for me as her partner. A cheater is aware that their actions are causing harm to their marriage otherwise. They'd be honest from the start. While I may never get over her affair with Michael, if she had told me herself, it would have demonstrated some respect. Emily's behavior revealed how little she valued me. My mind was preoccupied with figuring out what to do next, even though I was physically present at work. Aside from overhearing that conversation, I had no proof. And I had noticed no difference in her behavior over the previous 6 months when she was allegedly cheating. Confronting her without evidence may be foolish and ineffective. Emily would deny everything. Michael Evans would deny everything. Taking any legal action would result in a financial disaster. Evans was known to every judge, politician, and lawyer in the area. So clearing my reputation would have been extremely difficult. The idea of moving and beginning over crossed my mind. But our house was an issue, making it difficult to go. Emily's salary was insufficient to cover it, and we didn't have much equity. Given the existing market, it appeared unlikely that the house could be sold quickly enough to avoid foreclosure. Such a measure would harm our credit scores, which is especially concerning for a CPA seeking for work. It is difficult to be trusted with other people's money when you cannot manage your own. I required strong proof before making any decisions. I thought I could obtain evidence, but it came from an odd source 3 days later. Despite my attempts, I uncovered no supporting evidence. Emily's personal laptop revealed nothing, and no incriminating items were discovered stowed away. Then Emily called and invited us to a political announcement party at Michael Evans's house on Friday night. I assumed that would be his Senate campaign announcement, but I still lacked proof. Frustrated, we arrived at Evans's opulent estate near Washington Crossing, which included a backyard horse farm and a huge tent for guests. As we walked in, there stood Michael Evans, arrogantly greeting guests as if he were royalty. As a widower, Evans lacked a wife to perform hostess responsibilities, so he clearly enlisted his 21-year-old daughter. She stood behind him greeting visitors like it was second nature. When our moment came, Evans smiled at Emily, saying, "Emily, you did it, how great." He gave my wife a chaste kiss on the cheek before turning to face me. "Robert, it's lovely to see you again. I'd be lost without your wife. But it appears I'll have to give her up shortly when you start to grow your family." He chuckled at his own joke. "Just give her back when you're finished." And no hard feelings, more hilarity followed. Emily tensed slightly, and I wanted to choke the cocky fool. I got his hint, which he seemed to think went past my head. Who knows what the future holds? I replied in a flat and neutral tone, neither aggressive nor pleasant, echoing how I gave the audit results. Evans tensed slightly and Emily nudged me, saying something about being unpleasant. Evans smoothly moved on to the next visitor, leaving us alone with his daughter. Emily was definitely lovely, but Sophia Evans was breathtaking. Even through my seething rage, I couldn't help but notice her auburn hair and dazzling smile. She reminded me of a young Morena Herrera. If Emily resembled a voluptuous ballerina, Sophia looked like she belonged on a swimsuit calendar with Kate Upton. She had the kind of beauty physique, hair, and skin that photographers fantasized about and frequently had to embellish with Photoshop. Michael Evans had the classic political family, a triple threat. He seemed tailor-made for the roles of knowledgeable politician and family guy. Losing his wife to disease supplied him with the ideal husband idolized by all. And any critic risked career destruction. Sophia was a Penn State business and law student, as well as a princess and previous prom queen. Emily says she was a gymnast before becoming a university cheerleader. Sophia intended to audition for the Eagles cheerleading squad during the next open competition, having just turned 21. With a saintly late mother and a brilliant, attractive photogenic daughter. The media would go crazy. "You're on the campaign trail, Robert," Sophia screamed enthusiastically, embracing me tightly. This was not just a polite hug, it was a full-bodied squeeze with parts of her crushed against me in the most delicious way. "You look great. No wonder Emily has kept you all to herself. You never show up for any of our events. Don't overwork, it is not healthy for your health." She managed to express all in one breath in less than a second. My rage gave way to complete surprise. I gave her a few polite remarks on her appearance and was about to leave when two realizations hit me. First and foremost, Sophia never greeted Emily. Second, which party was she referring to? Before I could ask, Emily jumped in with her own greeting for Sophia, leaving us with no alternative but to surrender to the next guests in line as Emily and I sought a place to unwind. I wondered what Sophia may know. After giving my wife a drink, I asked Sophia about the events she mentioned. Emily just grinned and waved it off. She's just mocking the little brat. Michael occasionally has team meetings and strategy discussions here. He argues that having a drink helps him think better. And you never know who might be nearby at a pub. Sophia was home a few times when we met here. Do not distribute it around. But Michael allowed her to enjoy a drink at home before she turned 21. That made my thought race. This rascal may have had carnal contact with my wife right here at his house under the guise of business meetings. These could even pass as legitimate meetings, with Emily being the last to depart. Or perhaps she left first and returned after everyone else had left, avoiding suspicion about why she always stuck around to help her boss clean up after his wife died and his daughter had left for college. He didn't need a secret hotel room, so they left no evidence of their rendezvous. So Sophia goes to your team meetings, I inquired. Emily waved off the inquiry. No. She was at home on a couple of occasions when her classes were cancelled. She's only making fun of her father for partying during work hours. She tugged on my hand. Come on, honey. Let's fetch your young wife a drink. For the next hour, Emily stayed close to my side. We talked with some of her co-workers, and a few mentioned our aspirations to create a family, expressing both regret at perhaps missing Emily for a while and excitement about our future. Frankly, I was a little humiliated. How did all of these folks learn about our plans? An hour later, Michael Evans requested everyone's attention. His daughter beamed alongside him. He started by thanking everyone for attending. He then proceeded to unveil his major campaign. Despite expectations, the announcement sparked enthusiasm among the guests. I saw the local newspaper publisher with one of his reporters, likely taking notes for tomorrow's headline. I will save you the details of the other party. It would have been enjoyable if my heart hadn't broken and my mind hadn't been racing to locate proof. Approximately 90 minutes after the great announcement, Margaret Williamson, the first assistant district attorney, came and announced Michael's request to meet with his staff while he was still elected. Margaret was the office's senior manager, handling operations while prosecutors rotated every 4 years. Margaret remained a regular presence in the legal community, where she was respected for her integrity. Emily accepted the position primarily because of her. I have high regard for her, she said. Margaret had been married to an electrician for nearly 3 decades, who had helped her through college and now operated a profitable electrical contracting business. The pair was very committed to each other and served as role models for Emily and me. Margaret joked, I apologize for stealing your wife, Alex. Michael wants to talk about office organization when he finishes campaigning. With that, they left the gathering of surviving spouses. I sought shelter on the far side of the expansive pool opposite the patio where the party was raging. A wicker swing chair hung from chains in the shadow, providing a solitary space for reflection. My solitude was cut short after only 5 minutes when a voice interrupted. So this is where you are hiding? Sophia purred as she settled into the swing alongside me. She turned to face me, her small black dress clung to her tan hips, evoking seduction yet maintaining an appearance of innocence. This observation was nearly clinical in nature. Which reflects my mental state. You seem burdened, she said. I was hesitant to address this with my wife's lover's daughter, regardless of how lovely she was. We've been overloaded with office work and audits, I offered, attempting to direct the subject elsewhere. Is this true? Sophia expressed genuine curiosity. I just completed my final accounting course in university. We discussed forensic accounting and law enforcement. I found it fascinating, really. I inquired incredulously. It may not sound glamorous, but it's basically like being a detective, piecing together information from multiple sources to uncover the truth, especially when individuals try to hide it. Not everyone sees it this way, I admitted. Sophia went into detail about what she'd learned in class and why she thought it so interesting. I must say that I was impressed. I've met interns at firms who couldn't express themselves well on the issue. Focusing on her words allowed me to put away her attractiveness and, more significantly, the seething wrath within me. I found myself embracing the role of mentor, which helped to alleviate the inner stress. I noticed that you really appreciated the course. You seem to have a thorough understanding of the subject. Sophia blushed briefly at the compliment. The sexy pin-up demeanor disappeared, revealing a deeply moved young woman. I pondered joining the FBI, but after school. My father wants me to either prosecute or work for one of his friend's law companies. I'm not sure that's what I want, she admitted. You should follow your own goals, not your father's, I advised honestly. I wasn't opposed to upsetting that idiot's plans. I've had some contact with the FBI when audits revealed illicit behavior. I continued before Sophia could answer. I continued. Sophia, what is your goal here? Sophia held my look squarely and answered. I want you to end your marriage with this betrayer. I want my father's career ruined to the point that he can't be elected. Do you want to complicate your schooling? I asked. No. My mother left me her inheritance as a trust fund. I have not touched it, but if necessary, I could afford the remaining tuition and MBA expenses while still having a good cushion. Why didn't your mother leave with you? Given how much money she had, she could have gone to Ireland where your father could not reach, I inquired. Sophia grimaced. She was reared as an Irish Catholic. Divorce was not an option despite everything. My mother maintained her faith to the end. That is the only reason I believe her death was inadvertent, as destruction is inexcusable. Sophia's truthfulness was clear to me. She revealed a desire to derail her father's career, and my knowledge of this information did not bode well for his prospects. I didn't suspect it was a trap. If Emily and Michael wanted to ruin me, they could do it in open court. This type of plan was meant for needy people like me. A plan began to form in my head. I needed Sophia's help with a few things. At the very least, it would test her resolve to destroy her father. Okay, I consented. But I don't want to hurt him by sharing these images or even mentioning him in the divorce. Sophia seemed astonished. Why not? She demanded. I'm not saying we won't ruin him, but I'd rather avoid the awful publicity around a deceived husband in a political controversy. Instead, I aim to demolish what has worked for his entire life, eroding his authority and influence. And I can conduct a seamless, low-key divorce without raising any concerns, I explained. Sophia looked at me in disbelief. A minute later, a devious smirk spread across her face. What is your request? I grinned. I will do what I am best at. Please provide me with his personal and campaign finance documents. They charged Capone with tax evasion. After meeting your father, I am confident I will discover something, I said. What if not? She inquired. I smiled. I have another plan. Sophia and I kept ourselves busy for the next 3 days. She mounted a keystroke recorder on her father's laptop and home computer and backed up his hard drive. We set up their security system to sync records to a cloud space I controlled that was situated abroad. I decided not to monitor Emily's phone. Using Sophia's proof, I did not require anything additional. I activated a GPS tracker designed for parental usage. which mostly relied on mobile towers for location unless I initiated GPS activation. I simply did not want her to interrupt me at home while I was working. The day after Sophia's initial visit, I pretended to have a groin injury to avoid being close to my wife. After discovering Michael's numerous companions, I was unwilling to take any more chances than I already had. Furthermore, I questioned my ability to execute it without bursting in wrath. I also made an appointment with the doctor for STI testing. Initially nothing was found, although some such as if can take months to produce antibodies. Emily left for the Pittsburgh conference, her delight laced with resentment. It wasn't surprising that she was looking forward to the vacation. Despite everything, a part of me still loved her. I could never trust her again. But my sentiments persisted, however. The thought of having sex with her after what I discovered was terrible. Emily had packed and was ready for Michael and the junior lawyer who would be joining them for the conference. I wondered if the young man was aware he was their cover. Emily informed me that she will be back Sunday afternoon. After putting her bag by the front entrance, sitting at the table, I drank my coffee with my back to her. She embraced me from behind, her lips near my ear. "I hope you feel better so we can concentrate on the baby," she said softly, her voice evoking memories of warmer times. I fought back tears and managed to remain composed. I promised her that I would apply ice to speed up the healing process, stroking her hand and kissing her forehead. She muttered, "I wished I hadn't had to leave. It would be preferable to stay at home with you and spend the entire weekend nude." I could always alert Evans when something crucial came up. I made a spontaneous suggestion after noticing a change in her tone as she looked at me. "What is your issue with Michael?" she asked incredulously. "You appeared rude at the party, and now you act as if you loathe him." I forced myself to calm down and shrugged honestly. I've seen far too many pompous jerks like Evans who believe they are untouchable and the pinnacle of authority. They are large fish in little ponds, selling the illusion of power and convincing people to believe it. Big shots like the mayor of South Carolina last year embezzled city funds and had affairs with 3 married women. He is now serving a 10-year sentence in federal prison. And they have all divorced and been publicly embarrassed. Evans exudes the same vibe. If he makes it to Washington, he'll be preying on inexperienced interns within a week. However, his facade will finally disintegrate. And when it does, I don't want to be caught in the aftermath. Emily looked at me, taken aback by my previous outburst about such persons. I had never connected Evans with them until now. Perhaps I should have kept quiet. But expressing those emotions felt cathartic. Despite the termination of our marriage, I felt it was appropriate to warn Emily. I still loved her, even though trust had been permanently destroyed. "Alex, what you said about Michael is disgusting," Emily objected. "He's a nice individual who has done a lot for the district." "He is not like that." I sensed a plaintive tone in her denial. The unexpected sound of a car horn outside interrupted our conversation. "Michael is here," Emily sighed in annoyance. She gave me a gaze that quickly shifted from remorse to terror. Emily was concilio, saying, "I'll be back in 4 days. We can talk about it then, but brace yourselves. Sweetheart, we have a child to concentrate on." She embraced me and kissed me fervently. I responded with similar enthusiasm. "Have a good week," she whispered. "I love you," I said. "I love you too," she replied, picked up her purse, and opened the front door. "Goodbye, sweetheart," she called over her shoulder. "Farewell, Emily," I said before closing the door. 30 minutes later, I boarded a train to the city where Sophia and I had an FBI appointment. As it turned out, I did not need to collect any evidence. Michael Evans's embezzlement tactics were reasonably clever, in my opinion. Sophia and I met at her off-campus residence to review the documents she had taken from his computer. Overall, his tactics were rather ordinary. Based on the transfers, I estimated that he had almost $2 million in an offshore account. However, because those documents were not included, I was unable to establish whether it still exists. Much of this money came from small donors who are unlikely to get IRS attention. But why were out-of-state individuals contributing to the DA's campaign? I was able to track down several of the offenders whose cases had been dismissed or who had received abnormally lenient plea agreements. However, Sophia dropped the biggest shock. It turns out she was not Evans's only child. Along the way, he had children with two different women. One was born 3 years before his wife died, and his mother worked for him at the time. An 18-year-old hospital volunteer gave birth to their third child 8 months after their wife died. Evans paid each woman $2,000 per month as campaign advisors for poll research. Sophia almost destroyed her apartment in a fit of wrath. The flaming red hair was a clear warning sign. By the time Emily and Michael left, we had gone through all of Michael's records. Some questions remained, but we lacked the means to investigate further, so I documented my observations and scheduled a meeting with the senior FBI agent I worked with in the Philadelphia office. Sophia accompanied me as we recounted our invented story. She said that after taking a forensic accounting course, she wanted to study actual documents and innocently decided to look through her father's notes when she noticed differences. She approached me because of my wife's employment with her father and my previous experience in the sector. Gary was a seasoned professional. We suspected there was more to it, but we handed him a wrapped gift to avoid additional questions. A corrupt prosecutor in his own area is now running for a Senate seat. This professional boost seemed like it came from paradise. But Sophia had a late lesson. So we took a cab to her place, and I walked to the 30th Street station to catch the train home. The idea of packing and leaving crossed my thoughts when Emily returned. Gary promised to expedite the matter, intending to subpoena Evans's paperwork by Wednesday. Once the probe became public, they realized his authority was fleeting as his allies abandoned ship. Emily contacted me during my train trip home, citing a late meal and an expected absence from her room tonight. Sensing my attention, she inquired, and I vaguely indicated an FBI meeting, citing current investigation limits. This case seemed to weigh on you, she observed, looking for hints. I succumbed to temptation by mentioning crooked politicians, bribes, money laundering and scandalous affairs. She pouted. You're no fun. Don't worry, sweetie. Your secret is protected, I reassured her. When I returned home, I witnessed the end of a 10-year marriage as the sun went below the horizon. I felt like a spectator watching my life slip away. Hours passed before I awoke from my reverie. I realized I needed a change. Ironically, as I was mowing the grass, a BMW pulled up, and I noticed Sophia's statuesque legs covered in sandals reminiscent of ancient Greece. Her toga-like outfit, semi-sheer and clinging to her curves, enhanced her attractiveness. Long red hair surrounded her face, but her grey-green eyes and loving smile drew me in as she approached. I turned the engine off and met her. Sophia said, "You look better than I expected. I half expected to see you drowning in a bottle or considering a ledge." I chuckled. Last night I considered both options, but it had to be done, I explained. And it acts as a diversion. Have you consulted a lawyer, she inquired. I shrugged. I met with one on Tuesday before they went. Documents will be ready on Monday. I agreed to order a customer in Austin, depart on Tuesday, and stay for 3 weeks instead of doing my typical remote work. I shrugged again. It may appear like I'm avoiding, but I'd rather not be present when the commotion breaks out. Sophia nodded, understanding. She was aware of the attention that being that man's daughter would bring. She admitted it's a good idea to plan ahead. It is what you are good at, she grinned. Now I can plan accordingly. Okay, here's my plan, Sophia explained. I'll help you finish your assignment here. Then you will join me. We'll have some fun and maybe get a little wild. I have a bikini you will enjoy. I attempted to protest. I am still married. I mentioned that I don't think I'll be ready for anything anytime soon. You need to blow off some steam before you blow a gasket. She insisted, a malicious twinkle in her eyes. You know what they say. What works for one is good for another. Her expression was both playful and genuine. I couldn't help laughing in a stroke of luck. We ran across Rebecca after finishing the yard work. After refreshing ourselves, we went to a pleasant restaurant for a late lunch. I was not in the mood for payback. Physical and stimulating. But it was fantastic to get out. Especially with someone as lovely as Sophia. As I approached the restaurant, I saw Rebecca's car parked outside. I almost recommended to Sophia that we find another location. But I did not instead. I did something completely out of character. It was a spur-of-the-moment choice. Despite all of my careful planning, something inside me broke as I saw Rebecca's car in the parking lot. I casually embraced the red-haired beauty and let her into the restaurant without much ado. I gave the proprietor a gratuity to ensure we were placed at a specific table that was somewhat private yet viewable from certain angles. I sat beside Sophia and held her hand as she faced forth. "What is this about?" she asked with a nice smile. "Not that I am complaining," I chuckled. "Remember how I told you about discovering my wife's affair? What about her pal Rebecca? Her automobile is parked right outside." Sophia roared in laughter. "So am I," the other woman. "Okay, I can manage that," she joked, moving forward to give me a gentle kiss on the lips. A promise of more to come. Our dinner arrived, and I found myself completely engrossed in the moment, forgetting about the unplanned setup, as I enjoyed Sophia's company and humorous chat. "I've never heard counting sounds so naughty," she said, making me giggle. Looking back, I saw Rebecca walking by us. I pointed it out to Sophia. "Oh my God," she giggled. "This is too awesome," leaning in for another kiss. I felt my hand reflexively slide beneath the table and rest on Sophia's leg. Her skin was very silky, and her muscles were solid yet flexible. The contact sent goosebumps down my spine, and I was completely immersed in the moment until Rebecca's unexpected outburst ripped through the air. "Alex, what the hell are you doing?" she yelled, getting everyone's attention. "And who is this you're flaunting while your wife is gone? I anticipated more from you." I let go of Sophia's hand and turned to meet my ex-girlfriend. "What's the problem, Liv?" I asked, trying to ignore Rebecca's astonished expression. "It's a little carefree, physical, and engaging before Emily and I settle down and have a baby. Could you keep it down?" "Everyone is attempting to eat," I said, attempting to dismiss her concerns. "What?" she began, obviously taking in aback. "Oh, come on, Liv, Emily does the same. I'm sure she's having fun with her employer right now. And she's been doing it for months, so I thought it was only fair that I seduced the boss's daughter." Rebecca appeared to be about to have a heart attack as Sophia began to chuckle. I gently gripped her hand to quiet her. "Do you know about Rebecca?" I asked, with a scornful tone in my voice. "Emily, I'm sure, wanted to try something else. One last time before having a baby. Similar to her last fling before the wedding. If this was normal for her, what have you got against me, Michael?" I had no evidence of Emily's previous indiscretions, however. Once a cheater, always a cheater, as the saying goes. I placed my suspicions out there, wondering if Rebecca was unstable enough to validate them. She exhaled, "What, do you also know about this?" I responded, "No, thank you for the confirmation." I replied firmly, "Rebecca, go away." She turned quickly away from the table. A few minutes later, we heard a disturbance. Rebecca was exiting the restaurant. Sophia chuckled. "Well, it was fun while it lasted. I really wanted her to stay longer." Her smile caused me to blush as she said, "She's probably on the phone with your wife right now. Perhaps I give her 5 minutes until my phone rings. But if she leaves now, it will be a 5-hour drive home from Pittsburgh. That leaves us time for dessert before I pack up and go home. It's a shame I won't see you in that bikini you promised." Sophia laughed again. "Okay, maybe another time." She stretched out and grabbed my shirt, bringing me closer. "My semester concludes in a week and a half," she murmured in my ear. "I've always wanted to see Austin." Her words were barely audible as her tongue crept into my ear. Emily began phoning me 10 minutes after Rebecca left the restaurant. I listened to a few of her irate messages and found it almost humorous. After an hour of receiving her constant messages and texts, I blocked her number. I figured she'd call from another phone eventually. But she was traveling back from Pittsburgh, so she couldn't just borrow someone else's phone on the highway. When I came home, I packed up all of my personal items, not just those required for the journey to Austin. After Rebecca, I had hours of free time. I left my house probably for the last time. After booking a hotel room near the Philadelphia airport, I put most of my possessions in storage until I found permanent housing. I spoke with Sophia on the phone numerous times as she was out walking with a friend. Since her father was sending her nasty messages, I rescheduled my flight to Austin for the following day, departing on Monday. Despite Emily's persistent calls from several numbers, which included allegations about how I had ruined her life and career, I stayed determined. Rebecca's outburst gained attention, prompting a comment on a blog that appropriately characterized Sophia and me as participants in the escalating scenario. My remark about Emily's participation with Michael during their weekend in Pittsburgh sparked debate in the county's political and legal circles. For the remainder of the week, I avoided most of the news from Philadelphia. It wasn't until Friday that I received a letter from Margaret, a senior manager in the DA's office, who shockingly apologized for the incident. Margaret admitted Michael's extramarital encounters but claimed unaware of Emily's participation. She praised me for utilizing legal tools to seek payback on the lawyer. The following week in the DA's office was chaotic, with Michael attempting to shift blame to his daughter's disobedience, which was influenced by her adulterous spouse. However, his arrest on Tuesday, followed by dramatic events in the courthouse, altered the story. Margaret described in her letter how Michael was arrested during a meeting in his office, which shocked everyone in attendance. He was quickly hauled into prison and paraded in front of the media. Margaret apologized for the chaos and offered aid, understanding my undeserved situation. While some of her letter appeared to be targeted at damage control, I believed Margaret's sincerity arose from her moral and professional values. My intentions for a private divorce were ruined by my hasty encounter with Rebecca. Michael's arrest drew media attention, transforming our narrative into headline news with passion, treachery and revenge. Fortunately, being out of town kept me safe from the worst of the media frenzy. Furthermore, choosing a separate hotel room concealed my whereabouts, complicating attempts to locate me. However, as I checked in, I observed reporters stationed throughout the hotel, trying to catch a sight of me on television. I noticed them parked outside my house, photographing my relatives coming and going, while Emily remained inside. Sophia received the heaviest criticism as the daughter who deceived her father. Despite having to attend classes and take exams, she became an easy target for the media in the early days. Eventually the school intervened, ordering reporters to leave campus for disrupting students. Furthermore, two women who had children with Michael sought their 15 minutes of fame, fueling the media frenzy. With her final examinations finished, Sophia silently snuck away from campus and went for the airport. The media was disappointed but not completely surprised by her absence from the graduation ceremony. The narrative faded into the background over time, only resurfacing when Michael's trial began. His guilty plea led to a 20-year federal sentence, which spared Sophia and myself from testifying. The case eventually vanished from public view, taking Sophia, Emily and myself with it. Surprisingly, my divorce went quickly and without much controversy. Emily signed the paperwork, and 4 days later delivered a letter professing regret for her behavior. She admitted her hypocrisy after discovering her own infidelity and asked for an in-person apology when circumstances permitted. She concluded by expressing her eternal love and best wishes before moving to the Midwest to live with her aunt. My assistance in revealing Michael's misdeeds advanced my career, and the FBI recognized me for studying his tapes. I excelled in my work in Austin while maintaining anonymity from the media, uncovering not just the sought-after embezzler but also a second criminal. My firm promoted me to lead the white-collar crime unit, which some jokingly refer to as Alex's heroes. Working late became more pleasurable, especially with the help of my new assistant. a fresh college graduate eager to obtain expertise in forensic accounting. And the bikini looked much better on the floor of my hotel room. I hope you enjoyed that story. Here is another one. My name is Eldon. I'm 45 years old and have lived in New York City for most of my life. My relationship with my wife Lyra began as a fortuitous encounter in high school. We were both young and hopeful for the future. We fell in love with each other and agreed to live our lives together. After marriage, we've shared numerous days of laughter and sadness. And those memories bring me joy. My mouth's corners constantly raise involuntarily. We shared several key holidays, traveled together, and celebrated the birth of our child. I used to believe that our marriage was as strong as steel and that nothing could separate us. However, life is filled with surprises. Last year, after an accident, I gravely hurt my knee and had to undergo extensive therapy and rehabilitation. It was a nightmare for me. I was bedridden, had trouble moving around, and had lost my confidence and zest for life. To add to my misery, I began to feel Lyra was aloof and cold toward me. She no longer cared as much about me as she once did, and she appeared unconcerned about my recuperation. I recall previously complaining to her about the arduous labor of rehabilitation, and she only said a few words of comfort to me before leaving, as if she had something more essential to attend to. I gradually began to notice some details. Lyra began working longer hours on a regular basis, occasionally going out late. She usually claimed to be too busy at work, but I could tell she was avoiding me on purpose. Her cell phone became mysterious, and anytime I tried to peek at it, she swiftly hid it despite my personal struggle. I never questioned Lyra's commitment to me. We'd been in love for a long time, and she was always the person I trusted the most. I tried to convince myself that this was only a short setback, and that once my knee healed, everything would be back on track. Until one day, I overheard Lyra say a name over the phone: Dylan. A young colleague with whom I was unfamiliar. But there was something off about Lyra's way of talking about him. She seemed unusually intimate with Dylan, and her comments were ambiguous. I began to wonder what had happened between Lyra and Dylan, but I soon discounted the possibility. I believed in Lyra and our marriage. Perhaps I was simply being paranoid. After all, my wife was under a lot of stress during this difficult period and needed someone to talk to. So I resumed my treatment and recovery with a seed of uncertainty in my heart. Little did I realize that one day this seed would break through the earth and forever alter the direction of my life. As the recovery process delayed, my life appeared to be caught in a deadly loop. Every day, I had to endure discomfort and perform laborious rehabilitation activities. I expected Lyra to be my staunchest supporter, but the truth was disappointing. Lyra began working overtime more frequently, often arriving home late at night. At first, she always gave the excuse that her job compelled her to do so. So I didn't think much of it. However, as time passed, I became aware that her explanation contained numerous gaps. I contacted her office several times but was told she was already off duty when I inquired about this. Lyra was usually vague and evasive. I began to detect a shift in Lyra. She was no longer as concerned with my rehabilitation progress as she once was, and she appeared unconcerned about my suffering and distress. Lyra seemed unconcerned about my tossing and turning at night due to physical agony. I told her about my agony the next morning, but she only offered a few words of compassion before rushing off to work. Our communication grew increasingly sporadic, and even when we were together, Lyra was constantly distracted. Her gaze would stray, and she frequently grinned alone on her cell phone. But whenever I asked her about it, she avoided answering. I would occasionally catch a glance of her phone screen, and Dylan's name was constantly on it. Gradually, I began to distrust Lyra and Dylan's connection. I tried to convince myself that it was just a typical exchange among co-workers, but deep down I couldn't believe it. Lyra's intimacy with Dylan extended way beyond that of a co-worker. I once overheard Lyra on the phone with Dylan, discussing a time and place to meet. It was a weekend afternoon, and Lyra informed me that she had to work late at work. But when I conveyed my desire for her to spend more time with me, she appeared overwhelmed and flustered. She quickly grabbed her purse, announced that she was running late, and dashed out the door. I had a horrible feeling in my heart right then. I began to lose sleep, and images of Lyra and Dylan together kept popping up in my mind. I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid and that Lyra couldn't have violated our marriage. However, the struggle between reason and emotion placed me in a condition of intense anxiety as I sought to validate my thoughts. I began to watch Lyra's every move. I examined her credit card transactions and discovered that she frequently made purchases at upscale restaurants. There was nothing wrong with it, but interestingly, these transactions were usually made on days when she claimed to be working overtime. I also saw that Lyra began purchasing more costly clothing and cosmetics. This seemed weird to me. Lyra had never been a dressy person. She has always worn modest and simple clothing. But she has recently begun to make expensive purchases. All of these developments made me feel quite nervous. My intuition told me there was something wrong with our marriage. But I didn't want to believe it. I tried to tell myself that this was only a brief setback and that our marriage would be able to handle it. But deep inside, I knew the gap between us was gradually expanding. Lyra was becoming increasingly odd and our gap grew. I started to worry if our marriage would ever be the same again. I spent many hours tossing and turning, wondering what was wrong with our marriage. Was I simply being paranoid about Lyra's changes? And what was her relationship with Dylan? These questions, like unsolved mysteries, haunted my heart as time passed. My suspicions grew, and Lyra's conduct and flickering words all pointed to a horrific truth. However, I refused to accept that my wife, my longtime partner, would violate our marriage. But reason told me I needed to face reality. As a normal person, I decided to conduct a private inquiry into Lyra and Dylan's relationship. I didn't have any unique investigation abilities, so I had to start from scratch. I started by checking Lyra's Facebook accounts. I reviewed her friend list and updates at first. I noticed nothing out of the ordinary. But when I went on Dylan's page, my heart plummeted. There were numerous photographs of him and Lyra. The images appeared to be taken in a classy restaurant, and the grins were intimate and genuine. What made me anxious were the vague messages and conversations beneath the photographs. My heart was cut to the bone. These images, these interactions, they were similar to those shared by lovers. But I realized that this was insufficient evidence. Maybe they were simply close co-workers. Perhaps these photographs and words are just harmless jokes. I tried to convince myself, but deep down, I knew it wasn't true, so I decided to dig deeper. I started looking through Lyra's phone records and text messages. To my amazement, there was no evidence of anything untoward there. And Lyra appeared to be cautious enough to delete all communications with Dylan. This increased my suspicions. If they were just regular co-workers, why were they so concerned to conceal their communications? Following a friend's suggestion, I realized I needed more direct evidence. I set up a cell phone monitoring application. It's a lawful program that's primarily used by parents to monitor their children and employers to monitor their employees. I knew it could be unethical, but I had no choice. I needed to know the truth. After installing this software, I began watching Lyra's cell phone behavior in real time. At first, everything appeared normal, but gradually, I began to detect something suspicious. Lyra began utilizing encrypted messaging apps such as Signal and WhatsApp more regularly, and her chats on these platforms were immediately wiped. This confirmed my thoughts. If she and Dylan were only co-workers, why were they utilizing encrypted apps? During the surveillance, I also discovered that Lyra frequently communicated with Dylan over the phone late at night. These calls often lasted a long period, often more than an hour, and Lyra would instantly delete them. I began documenting all of the evidence I intercepted: intimate social media photos and exchanges, as well as when and how frequently they spoke on the phone. I knew all of this would be useful proof in the future. Regardless of the anguish and rage in my heart, I stayed rational, knowing I'd need more conclusive evidence to finally find the tragic truth. I determined to continue my investigation until I found conclusive proof. However, I began to consider how I would deal with this unpleasant truth if my suspicions were verified. Divorce. I'm not sure what revenge looks like. All I know is that whatever difficulties and impediments may arise, I must confront them bravely. So step by step, I approached the truth. Although each discovery felt like a knife in my heart, I realized I had no alternative. I had to discover the awful reality, no matter where it took me. While accumulating evidence, I increasingly concluded that Lyra and Dylan's relationship appeared to have gone beyond what I had previously assumed. They had deceived each other emotionally as well as physically. This knowledge, like a massive black hole, almost consumed all of my will and hope. But I knew I needed to keep going. I needed to uncover the facts and make a decision for myself and our children. When I finally proved Lyra's infidelity, I felt betrayed and angry as I'd never felt before. I used to believe that our marriage was based on love and trust. But now I see that it was all a scam. Lyra's betrayal broke all of my assumptions about love and marriage. Following the first shock and hurt, a strong desire for vengeance developed in me. I decided I couldn't let Lyra off the hook so lightly, and she'd have to pay for her actions a hefty price. But I also realized that I couldn't act impulsively. If I divulged everything at once, Lyra may deny it for any number of reasons, including accusing me of it. I needed a well-thought-out plan to demolish her once and for all. I first decided to keep accumulating evidence. I knew the proof I had was sufficient to show Lyra's infidelity, but it wasn't enough to justify a revenge plot. I needed additional evidence. More conclusive evidence. Lyra felt embarrassed in front of her friends and family because of the thorough evidence. I began watching Lyra's phone and social media more frequently. I documented every phone call, chat, and meeting between her and Dylan. I even followed them about and snapped personal photos of them in restaurants and hotels. These images would play a key role in my retribution scheme. In addition to gathering proof, I started developing a thorough revenge plan. My goal was not only to obtain a divorce but also to make Lyra feel the pain of betrayal and appear awful in front of her friends and family. My idea was broken down into multiple steps. First, I would hint at Lyra's infidelity to her friends and family when she was least expecting it, not too direct, but enough to pique their suspicion and curiosity. I let these doubts simmer in their brains until the time was ripe. Then, I would stage a coincidence in which Lyra's friends and family discovered intimate images or talks between her and Dylan. This stage required a great deal of attention, and I needed to ensure that everything appeared to have happened by chance. I even considered fabricating some proof. However, in the end, I decided to use actual proof because the truth is always the most potent weapon. Next, I would exhibit strange conduct in front of Lyra, making her question if I was aware of her infidelity. I'd purposefully bring Dylan's name up in front of her, implying that I knew something she didn't want me to know. It would be a long process, and I would have to be quite patient. Lyra became increasingly worried and disturbed. Finally, after all of the arrangements were finished, I would choose a significant day, such as our wedding anniversary or Lyra's birthday, to reveal Lyra's infidelity in front of all of our friends and family. I'll expose all of the proof, including every photo and conversation log, so that everyone can see Lyra's true colors. I understand that this plan may appear harsh and perhaps insane, but the anguish of Lyra's betrayal was so profound that I had no alternative but to strike back with equal intensity. We are in the midst of developing this plan. I also began to dwell on our marriage. I started to question if our love for one another had been an issue from the start. Perhaps I never truly loved me, and our marriage was doomed from the beginning. Regardless of the past, I am determined to carry out my retribution plan. I know it will be a long and arduous journey that will put my patience, wisdom and determination to the test. but I am prepared to face any challenges that may arise. I also began to reflect on my life. I began to consider how my life would continue after Lyra. Perhaps this retribution scheme is intended not only to punish Lyra but also to give me a fresh start. So with mixed emotions, I began my retribution journey. I knew it would be a painful and dark road. But I was prepared because at the conclusion of the voyage, a new life awaits me when everything was ready. I began carrying out my meticulously prepared retribution strategy. I knew that simply exposing Lyra's infidelity would not be enough to have her fully feel the pain of betrayal. I needed to make her experience the anguish, desperation and helplessness I was experiencing. My initial approach was to intentionally create some misunderstanding in order to make Lyra feel uneasy and suspicious. I started coming home late more frequently, sometimes staying out all night. When Lyra questioned where I had been, I was always imprecise and intentionally left some suspicious clues, such as lipstick marks on my collar or a strange perfume aroma on my body. I knew these minor facts were enough to raise Lyra's suspicions. She became nervous, constantly trying to find out where I was. Her discomfort grew more with each passing day. Adding to Lyra's suspicions, I started going out more often with my buddies, Ounce and Nina. I purposefully chose restaurants and pubs that Lyra was familiar with to ensure she could see us together. Sometimes I would even say Nina's name in front of her while pretending not to notice. Lyra's face flashed with worry and rage whenever Na was mentioned. She began probing me about my relationship with Na, even searching my cell phone. This was precisely the impression I desired. I wanted her to go through the agony of doubt and suspicion before taking the next step. I even shared some images with Na on social media. The photographs were carefully selected, each one is full with ambiguity and closeness. I knew Lyra would see them, and that would be the final straw that broke her back. At the same time, I continued to gather Lyra and Dylan's communications using the spy app. I was able to track every conversation in real time. These records will serve as critical evidence in my retribution plot. At one time I overheard an especially intimate chat. Lyra and Dylan's chat about their future plans, including divorce and remarriage, was the catalyst for my revenge plan. Lyra's uneasiness and distrust intensified with time. She started questioning me more regularly and following my movements. On a few times, I even caught her secretly examining my computer and cell phone. I knew it was just what I wanted. I wanted Lyra to experience the pain of betrayal as well as my sense of powerlessness and despair. Only then will my vengeance really begin. But at the same time, I started to feel exhausted and confused. This game of vengeance appeared to be gradually eating my existence. I started to wonder if it was actually worthwhile. But every time I think about Lyra's violation of those private moments she shared with Dylan, my rage returns. I knew I needed to keep going. I needed to carry out my revenge plot as a result. As I was creating disruption and gathering evidence, my revenge plot began to take shape. I knew the big moment was approaching. I was about to confront Lyra, our past, and our failed marriage. This will be a defining moment, one that will decide the outcome of my vengeance and future. But regardless of the outcome, I was prepared to face it because, after everything I've been through, I am no longer the same person. My plan for vengeance unfurled. Lyra's behavior started to become increasingly unpredictable. I could tell she was in a state of intense panic and disorientation. Lyra initially attempted everything she could to reclaim my trust. She began sending me frequent messages, asking where I was and what I was doing. She even started cooking some of my favorite foods in an attempt to impress me. But I ignored her behavior. I carried out my revenge plan, causing mayhem and gathering proof. I knew that my vengeance would not begin until Lyra experienced true betrayal. Lyra began to wonder if I was having an affair. She became increasingly desperate and unhappy as a result of this. She began apologizing and pleaded with me for forgiveness. She even offered to accompany me to marriage counseling to try to save our marriage. But I refused all of her proposals. I told her I needed time to ponder and wasn't sure I trusted her. Every time I looked into her eyes I saw sorrow. I felt a twinge of joy. That's exactly what I wanted. I wanted her to experience my pain. Lyra grew increasingly doubtful and angered over time. She began monitoring my phone and computer constantly to see if I was having an affair. On a few occasions, she even followed me around to catch me cheating. I was amused by her behavior. I intentionally left some confusing evidence, such as weird women's phone numbers and dubious receipts. I knew these traces would increase Lyra's suspicion and worry. Finally, in a very heated exchange, Lyra asked me directly if I was cheating on her. She stated that she would rather know the truth and continue living in doubt and confusion. I merely chuckled coldly at her questions. I informed her that I was not obligated to explain anything to her. I explained that our marriage had ended, and it was time to confront reality. I noticed a look of desperation and sorrow on her face. She started crying frantically and begged me to give her a chance. However, my heart was already connected to her. I knew this was the final element in my retribution plot. Following that, Lyra got increasingly desperate and disillusioned. She began drinking excessively and spent her days in tears. She tried everything she could to get me back. But I had already made my decision. I realized it was time to deliver the ultimate blow in my revenge plot. And so, amid Lyra's misery and pain, my revenge plot came to a close. I knew the final struggle was coming. I'd confront Lyra, our past and our damaged marriage. This would be a defining moment, one that would decide the outcome of my vengeance and future. But regardless of the outcome, I was prepared to face it. After a long time of misery and suffering, I resolved to carry out the final stage of my revenge plot. I chose Christmas Eve because I knew it would be very important to Lyra. We had promised to spend our lives together on Christmas Eve. And now I was going to end our marriage on the same day. That night I created a detailed evidence folder. This folder contains all of Lyra and Dylan's communications, including phone conversations, text messages, and emails. I even printed sensitive images and chats from social media. I know this evidence is sufficient to show Lyra's adultery. They would be a potent weapon in court and provide the proof I needed to reveal Lyra's true colors to the world. In addition to the evidence folder, I included a divorce agreement. With this agreement, I requested for our real estate and the majority of our assets. I understand that may appear greedy, but I believe it is the price Lyra should pay. Her betrayal has harmed me more than money can buy. However, I did not stop there. I made sure Lyra was humiliated in front of her friends and family. I emailed all of the evidence of adultery to Lyra's friends and family, implying that she had been unfaithful. I knew that when they saw the evidence, they would be astonished and outraged, forcing Lyra to face their questions and accusations. And she would never be able to hold her head up to anyone again. When everything was ready, I placed the evidence folder on Lyra's bedside table alongside the divorce documents. I also attached a Merry Christmas note. I knew Lyra would be stunned and frantic when she saw them. Late that night, I silently packed my luggage and brought my most valuable possessions with me. I took one final glance at the house I had loved so much and left. Determined. I knew this would mark a new beginning in my life. Lyra must have been horrified the next morning when she awoke to find out what had transpired. I can understand her astonishment, pain, and sadness. But I cannot sympathize with her. This was the effect of her decision. My life changed drastically over the next few days. I moved to a new city and began a new work. I knew it would be a difficult process, but I was prepared to see it through. My attorney discovered that Lyra was attempting to preserve our marriage. She urged me to give her a chance, but I declined. I informed her that there was no longer any prospect for us. Her cheating had absolutely shattered my faith and affection for her. In court, I presented all of the evidence as expected. The judge upheld the most of my claims, and Lyra was ordered to leave our home and pay substantial alimony. I understand it's a heavy blow for her. But it's what she deserves after that. I began my new life. Although the procedure was challenging, I've never regretted my decision. I know I did the correct thing. I couldn't keep living a life of lies and betrayal. Through this experience, I hope to encourage all people who have been in similar situations to not be frightened to confront the truth and to make a change. Betrayal can cause enormous pain, but it can also be an opportunity for a fresh start. Do not allow someone else's adultery to define your life. You have the right to pursue your own happiness and to be with an honest and faithful partner. Do not settle, do not make compromises. At the same time, I hope my experience serves as a caution to anyone considering adultery. Infidelity is extremely costly and has the potential to destroy not only your marriage but also your life. Determine what you truly desire and do not sacrifice a lifetime of happiness for a moment of passion. In closing, I'd like to remark that while this story is filled with grief and suffering, it has also taught me a lot. It taught me courage, strength and self-esteem. It taught me that nothing is more essential than being honest and respectful. I hope that my story can inspire and support others who are going through similar experiences. Remember that you have the ability to conquer any challenge you may be experiencing. Believe in yourself, believe in the future, and you will discover your own happiness. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.